Hello guys, today in part 2 of my DiamondFire coding tutorial, I will teach you how to spawn mobs and use text codes such as colors to make your pods better in DiamondFire. Let's get straight into it. The first thing we will need to do is open up the reference book. This is in your inventory. In here, we'll go to the color codes, and as you can see, there are many options. But we'll be using Ambi, Aqua, and A, green, and ANC, red. Other than this, there are options such as bold and italics. Next up, we will enter the target menu. These are converted into player names or UIDs whenever they are placed in text. For instance, %default is the default player, or the person who triggered the event, %killer is the killer, and %victim is the victim. These can also be entities, which we'll use. We'll be sending a join message that is personalized with the player's name. As you can see, we just put %default, which for me will turn into CrotaPlague, as that is my username. As you can see, it says welcome CrotaPlague. We will be adding color later on. Before that, however, we'll be adding a leave message. And we will be adding a color code this time. Right before the player's name, which is %default, we'll add ANC, which is red. You can see that in the text above your hotbar. That's the word. And when we leave, boom, it says bye CrotaPlague. It says that in chat, and as you see, my name is red. In order to edit a text, you have to shift and left click it. We will be using multiple text codes in this one. I used Ambi, which is cyan, or light blue, and A, which is lime. As you can see, 2 text codes in chat. Now we will be spawning a mob. In order to do this, we need to use the game action block. This affects stuff inside of the pot such as spawning mobs, which we'll be doing, and setting blocks. In the entity spawning, we simply need to put the spawn egg we're doing. In this case, I'll be spawning a zombie, and then we need to put a location in there. This represents a location on the pod. In order to set this, you can left click the block, shifting and left clicking in order to test it, or you can right click to set it to your exact location. And this goes in the second slot inside of the chest. And this will cause a zombie to spawn at the location that you identified. Now in play mode, we can see that a zombie spawned at the location that I selected. However, we can also see that it immediately caught on fire. This is because it is daytime and it didn't have a helmet, so let's give it one. Specifically, I'll be using a leather helmet. This goes inside of the bottom left slot, second from the left. The one on the far left is the main hand of the mob. Now, giving it a name, I will simply set it to %defaults zombie, which for me will become CrotaPlague's zombie, and of course it has the helmet we gave it. Now, I will give the name a color code. ANC is red, and AN6 is orange, or sort of gold color, of course. The name goes in the 4th slot as I demonstrated. Now, I will be giving the zombie a main hand item. This goes in the very most bottom left slot, and I will be giving it a stone axe for test purposes. As you can see, the zombie spawns with a stone axe, but I will also be giving it full armor just to demonstrate the slots. After the boots, that is where the offhand is. Now we will be taking a look at another block. We'll be taking a look at the entity action. With the player action, it does something to entities. Just simply this does stuff to mobs, while the player action does stuff to players. I took the armor out, and in the entity action, I went to the settings tab and set the zombie invulnerable. This means that even though it still is on fire, it cannot take damage from both the players or from the fire. If you were looking for a way to make it so that the zombie won't be on fire without having to give it a helmet, you may be inclined to set fire ticks. However, in this method, it will only do that the first time that the player joins, or on the join event, it won't constantly do that. You know, putting the 0 number inside of it, which represents the 0 ticks. However, I will be, in a future video, demonstrating how to do this constantly so that it'll never be on fire. However, what you can do is you can immediately set the zombie on fire without the slight delay if you give it a number such as 1000 ticks. Now, I will be demonstrating another event. This one will be the player damage entity event. Using this, I will send in chat that the player has damaged the entity specifically by using their names. So for the player, that is %default, and for the victim, the zombie, the one who took damage, that will be %victim. I'll also spice it up with a color code. And F is basic white text, and 6 is the gold or orange, and as you can see there, it also still has the color code from the name we gave it earlier. Now we will be doing yet another event. In the death event section, we will be using the mob kill player event. Here, we will be referencing both the player and entity, the zombie, mob, by their names, and we will also be sending it to all players on the plot. Now, to select all players, you have to shift and right click on the player or entity action. This is called a selector, which I'll go into more detail in another video. Present victim, in this case, will be us, the person dying. Well, the default is the entity that killed in the event, the zombie. Now, we will be also placing an entity event. It's the gold block, and this runs under events where an entity does something. As selected, I did an entity damage event whenever the entity takes damage. I placed yet another player action. I shift and right clicked it to select all players, and I put in one simple message that %default was damaged. So it sends the zombie's name and then says was damaged and sends it to everyone.